COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Tore Njelsvik, and I'm the Secretary General of International Council for Open and Distance Education, ICDE. For those of you who are new to us, ICDE is the leading global membership organization of open, flexible, and distance education. We have more than 200 members and partners in over 70 countries in all world regions. Our members are mostly represented by higher education institutions, but we also have individual and student membership. And these members engage in our activities, which can be projects, conferences, and events, networks, and committees, like the Quality Network, which stands behind this particular webinar series. Today's moderator is Professor Emeritus of Distance Education and Development from the Open University of UK, Alan Tate, a long-standing ambassador for ICDE and a previous member of our executive committee. Alan is also the chair for ICDE's Quality Network, consisting of 7 focal points and experts in online and distance education, representing our different world regions. So please, Alan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Tore, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to colleagues around the world. This is the third of our webinars from ICDE on quality and assessment. And today we're putting into focus the 2 world regions of Europe and Africa. We've had 2 previous webinars on different regions of the world, and you can find those webinars together with reports from the ICDE Quality Network on the ICDE website. And if you haven't spent time in the ICDE website, I can recommend it very strongly because it's full of resources, which I think you'll find useful. So let me just set out what's going to happen in this event. We've got 2 speakers to whom I'll introduce you in just a second. They're going to be speaking for something around 15 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation through the question and answer box. I'll pull out questions and issues that you raise and ask our speakers to comment on them. And the whole event will last an hour, so we won't extend it over that time. Just 1 or 2 administrative points, which our organizer, who I'd also like to thank, Julie Shearing, has brought into focus for us. First of all, to let you know the webinar will be recorded, and slides and recordings will be available after the webinar has finished, and we'll email the slides to all registrants, so you will get the slides. So asking questions and making comments, please use the Q&A box function, not the chat box. So that's important. That's the one we'll be monitoring, the Q&A box function. You might like to know that the webinar will be live streamed on the ICDE YouTube channel, so that's something you can get access to afterwards if you want to. Also importantly, to let you know that there'll be 1 more, and I think this will be the final webinar in this series for the ICDE Quality Network, which will be held on December the 9th at midday Central European time, with a focus on Asia, that enormous and important continent. So that's December the 9th. A date for your diaries, and ICDE will, of course, in due course, be sending out reminders. And do follow ICDE on social media to stay up to date with that offering and with others. So let me move, first of all. Our first speaker is going to be George Eubanks. And just let me tell you who George is, a very important person in our world. George is Managing Director of EADTU, the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities. So George is in a position to have a very good perspective on Europe as a whole. EADTU is Europe's leading institutional association in online, open and flexible higher education, and is at the heart of the modernization agenda for European universities. George is responsible for the development and support of the EADTU network, for policies and the execution of its goals in online and flexible higher education. He's coordinator of international academic cooperation networks on networked curriculum, virtual mobility, quality assurance in e-learning, and business models for lifelong learning. And to mainstream results and create European impact, EADTU organizes several local, that is European seminars, as well as conferences European-wide, and organizes together with the European Commission a yearly summit for the main stakeholders in higher education. So, George, can I please hand over to you for perspectives from the European region?
Thanks, Alan, for the invitation and the introduction. Yes, indeed. So also in Europe, we have faced the challenges of the COVID crisis, and I have gathered some input in that respect. I'm going to share my screen for that. Yes, and I make it presenter mode. Yes, so representing the ICDE focal point for Europe, including SADA and VIA, to our partners in this. I want to sketch a bit the situation here in what's happening in Europe and the response to the COVID crisis at the academic level. First of all, some figures. Here from the European Commission in May 2020 survey done by the European Commission, it indicated that well, 95%, almost all universities needed to organize online distance education as a response to the COVID crisis, of which even more than 80% changed to online examinations. Well, not hoping, but well, facing the second wave of COVID now since September, October, many universities wanted to try having the combination of students on site, but fewer, and in combination with students online, because not all students were anymore allowed to be on campus. There would be too many. But already after a few weeks, we were facing another lockdown, which forced them to go online and distance education again. That, of course, was very challenging for the teachers, bringing them to an extreme workload to make the shift to online education, but also not really getting the time to adapt to the quality that is well looked for, because it's all done. Online education is all done as an emergency remote teaching, which means that they want to keep the schedule that was already in place for the students, and then have on that same hour that the students would normally be on campus, an online equivalent, meaning that students get 40-50 minutes, the teacher often reading out online the material for the course or program. So it's challenging, and still we have not made big steps in moving to better quality of online education there, which also means that it's challenging for students. And actually, students are starting a manifest here in the Netherlands on quality education. Even here, they call it depressed students. They are online teaching is making them depressed. They are missing the connection with other students, and also there are protests against online education here in the Netherlands now, as they say this is not real education, this is not quality, we deserve better. And they are coming with alternatives like there are so many office buildings empty now, can't we use these for lectures and so on? But of course that's not really feasible either. But it gives the situation at this moment that for teachers as well as for students, this is not an optimum. But okay, let's put this also in perspective. If the pandemic would have occurred half a century ago, there wouldn't be any education at all. So we have to embrace online education, but be in search for better quality. And this is, of course, there. We have many universities, and especially open universities, who work for decades on research on offering quality education there. But let's see how we get to that stage of going to further quality online education. So the crisis challenged many higher education institutions. The improvisation currently going on is appreciated, but in the second wave, students start complaining. And overall, digital literacy is clearly needed with students, teachers, but also parents who are helping the younger students. Looking at recent research done by the European Commission's Joint Research Center on the effect of COVID-19 on education, they pose two key challenges for policymakers. First of all, make up for the learning loss that has clearly occurred. I've seen now that Dutch universities have just opened the new year 2 months ago, and they have now 8% more students than the year before. So one explanation of this growth of 8% is that more students are not looking for an in-between year. They immediately go from secondary school to the university, which is fine. But the bigger part is to be explained that in secondary school, mostly all students got their diploma. There was they all got the benefit of the doubt because of this crisis situation. And therefore, more students are past the exams in secondary school and going to university now. So somehow, at some point, you have to make up for the learning loss. Secondly, we have to find alternative methods of delivering teaching and learning. It should be put as one of the new priorities for universities to make the switch, not only for this pandemic, but also be prepared for the future, and not only as an alternative for when there is a pandemic, but also to enhance education, to take this momentum to go offer online education, hopefully also next to campus face-to-face education. According to the Joint Research Center study, the following elements should then be part of a successful strategy integrating online, offline teaching and learning activities. So they come with this list. The first 3 more infrastructural elements, like guaranteeing access to internet. If not, in some countries, you can think about broadcasting education and adopt proper virtual learning environments. But also many universities or educational institutions needed to make a switch to virtual learning environments or get used to the to all the facilities that are on virtual learning environment. They didn't know really well to use them to an optimum. So there needs also be exchange between educational institutions and how to use the VLEs to their best. Then also about support. We need to support students, especially also students with special educational needs, but in general, students to take up digital technologies and make the best of their studies online, support teachers, improve the teachers' digital competencies. This is a priority also, and support where needed also parents to help the children, especially for younger students, in guiding them through the studies that are now mainly online. In the Netherlands, most universities have now already said it will be online education up till July 2021. So it's really a new world for them. In professionalizing online education, which is the highest priority at this moment, to further educate the educators in the digital didactics. The elements to professionalize online education, you must think about building on expertise and experience that is already there from more experienced institutions. Use methodologically designed education and research-based, well-considered digital didactics. Professionalization also means that you include interaction, debate, dialogue as part of the synchronous and asynchronous online education. Have activating education with engaging students by knowledge video clips, serious gaming, peer meetings, and so on. Extending enriching programs by the use of virtual mobility and safe software use. So these are main elements of professional online education. Main message that we want to give to universities is also do not copy on-campus education, which is mostly done now. Use new modes of teaching, including the pedagogics that are needed, that are behind that, to enhance the education. So what is needed is at this moment that we share expertise in this field. There is a wealth of research and good practices there. There are many universities who have broad experience of online and blended education already for decades. Face also the challenges of digitalization, like privacy issues, e-assessments, online interaction between students and so on, which is often, up till now, when it was possible and it was more optional to take online education, it was postponed like it's bringing too many difficulties, it isn't working, we need to reconsider and so on. Now we really have to take the momentum and face the challenges of digitalization and start the discussion also within your institution and with companies on how to support the systems, because the innovation in education and the support systems are often coming from commercial companies. Looking at the expertise that is needed to support the main trends and practices in coping with the COVID crisis, is that we find models of synchronous hybrid learning, blended learning, and online and distance learning. Many universities, and I recently heard also at the Magna Carta presentation by the University of Bologna, they really chosen synchronous hybrid education, which means that you find pedagogical models in students present at the university in combination with students online present. So it is fully synchronous, but you can play with modes of education by students present and using the students virtually present online. As blended learning offers the possibility of asynchronous education. So it's a different synchronous hybrid learning can be part of blended learning, but blended learning as such is broader and also has modes of asynchronous education. And in case there is a full lockdown, students are not able to come to the campus, we need to have and share expertise on quality online and distance learning. So these three models we can distinguish. Looking at the EUA briefing, they also collected information on the COVID crisis and also looked specifically at internationalization and mobility. One of the first victims was internationalization, with almost 2/3 of the institutions that saw their outgoing students' mobility impacted already in March 2020. 70% have chosen to go continue the mobility and internationalization by virtual modes of internationalization. And when transborder mobility actually became a kind of an illegal act, there were other challenges to cope with, like students abroad with expiring grants, visas, resident permits, and so on. These were key challenges of both hosting and sending universities that were faced, which also calls for new modes of mobility, innovations in mobility by using virtual mobility. So far, neither virtual mobilities nor the virtual international classroom have become common practice, was concluded. But it is already in the programs of the European Commission. Actually, it is for some years now in the strategic partnerships, but also in European university alliances that are currently developing and supported by the European Commission. So these are networks of European universities for collaboration, but also for exchange of students in virtual mobility. This is becoming a more and more common practice in the coming programs, in the running programs, I must say. Virtual mobility, it can be exploited in more systemic, strategic fashion to complement physical mobility and serve as an additional option. There has always been some discussion in the past years, like virtual mobility as an alternative for physical mobility, but we very much promote virtual mobility as an entity in itself. It has different learning objectives. It is supporting different students, but especially they learn different things, and the students can visit more than one university. As physical mobility, a student visits one university. It's also, you can also with virtual mobility play more with shorter visits in time, as physical mobility is really a certain period of a minimum of 3 months at another European university. So there are many different elements and should never be seen as an alternative or a second best solution. Virtual mobility has very strong points and added value for students. We have within EDTU worked on this virtual mobility concepts in a task force over the past 2 years. You can find all the outcomes on this. You see here down on the right the link to virtual mobility edtu.eu. You can find all the formats and types of mobility there, which are currently running in Europe, and which can be taken as examples for universities now to organize virtual mobility instead of physical mobility. In the end, these are all tools to organize international academic experience. So what are now, after the Corona crisis, the next steps for universities to be taken? So first of all, every educational institution needs to reconsider its own educational model. We have to look into new strategies, making it, rather than emergency remote teaching, a strategy, integrated element of a university to offer online education, not only for to cope with the pandemic, but also to improve the education of the university. Most urgently, educate your educators in the use of digital didactics. Look at what is quality in online education. Shift educator tasks, not only from provider, also to developer, and evaluate and innovate your education over and over again. EDTU supports these new movements, especially at this momentum, by dedicated websites where we collect good practices, but also guidelines on innovating higher education by online education and representing quality in online education. We also did a presidential call this year in which we emphasized the importance of sharing your good practices, your guidelines on this platform. At all universities, the list is much longer. All universities that have examples, we included in this website, and you also see the ICDE webinars are included in our website of joining online education to cope with the COVID crisis. Also, EDTU provides on 12 fields of expertise on the use of new modes of teaching and learning. We provide expertise on the web, but also by 80 experts European-wide from about 20 universities in Europe. We share the expertise on the use of online education to improve the quality there. Here you see these fields of expertise that we're covering, from e-assessment to student support online, international education online, and so on. Recently, we also have launched our European maturity model for blended education, in which we cover elements of quality of blended education by inclusiveness, flexibility, interaction in this embed model for blended education. And here we also provide tools of elements you can think of a combination of online and face-to-face, which in COVID probably the online part will gain more interest. And then you can imagine that you have a kind of a snake here going from online to face-to-face, or staying in online provision and online tools. If you want to learn more about this, the MOOC on Embed just started again on the FutureLearn platform. Well known, I guess, is also our e-excellence model on quality in online education, where universities, and now even more important in the COVID crisis, that universities can check their online education performance by 35 benchmarks. These benchmarks can be checked on the website of e-excellence, and every institution can learn from the manual per benchmark on how they can improve their online provision. So I will not go in further detail on this, but you can find everything on the e-excellence EDTU. We further promote also by having consultations with the European Commission, and also on different conferences like ICDE or Eden last week. We promote further the uptake of quality in online education there and via our website. So thank you very much. That covers the story from the viewpoint of the European focal point.
Thank you very much indeed, George. Thank you very much indeed, George. Thank you for all your work as a focal point on quality assurance. The range of resources are truly impressive that you set out there, and I think they'll be of interest to people around the world. And I guess people can get access to those through the EADTU website, best of all. Now, I don't see any questions in the Q&A box yet, so I think if we move straight on to Professor Tanglang, we'll do our Q&A following that. Let me introduce colleagues to our second speaker, who will be giving us a perspective on the continent of Africa. Professor Nebath Tanglang is a professor of sports management and he works with the National Open University of Nigeria. He served as Deputy Vice-Chancellor of NOUN, as the National Open University of Nigeria is known, and presently he is the Director of Academic Planning, as well as the Director of the African Council for Distance Education, Quality Assurance, and the Accreditation Agency. So Professor Tang Lang has a senior experience at one of the major open universities in Africa, as well as a perspective on what is going on in many countries in Africa. And so he's a very valued participant today. Professor Tang Lang also told me today that as a professor of sports management, his particular passion is volleyball. So you can keep that in mind as you listen to Professor Tang Lang. Professor Tang Lang, may I hand over to you, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening all. Thank you for the opportunity given to me. The subject of my presentation had to do with quality assurance and assessment, just to give the perspective of Africa. But particularly what I'm going to talk on is particularly in Nigeria, and specifically in my own institution. I'm going to share experience on the issue of assessment, especially during the COVID-19. Sorry. These are the things that I want to talk on: the COVID-19 impact on school closure, the quality issues in online learning, quality assurance and assessment, and challenges of virtual assessment. Well, it is a known fact that over 50 million children were kept at home in Nigeria during this period, and our universities, 1.7 students were also kept at home. And this brought a complete setback on the students' progress. And even before COVID-19, our universities were closed down because the Academic Staff Union had been on a strike. And even right now, as I'm talking to you, the universities are still closed down, even with the ease of COVID-19 activities. Institutions were making frantic efforts during this period to provide online learning infrastructures, because this thing took the African universities by surprise. It was never expected, and there was no plan right from the beginning that such thing will happen. So when this COVID-19 came up, there were frantic efforts for institutions to provide online learning infrastructures. In Nigeria in particular, there was a day that the Minister, Federal Minister of Education had a discussion with all vice chancellors of Nigerian universities. And the directive was that they should go back and then come out with a plan on how they will handle the issue of online learning. So that's what the universities are doing now. And the capacity building of staff on the use of online learning tools have been intensified. Particularly in my institution, there are some institutions that have asked our institution to train their staff. And that is what our institutions have been doing, because the closure of schools did not affect my own institution, because already we have been facilitating our students online, and that was not a big problem for us. So most institutions are now coming to us to seek for assistance in terms of training their staff on how to deliver online. We have seen online learning programs on the radio, TV, and the use of social media on the increase in most countries. Schools in the rural areas were not benefiting from such initiatives because some of these technologies, they need electricity, they need internet, which are not there in the rural areas. So these are the problems that we are facing even right now. Internally displaced persons and those in correctional centers were not catered for. These are the challenges we are facing because of crises that we are having in most countries. Some of these people that are living in camps, they are not catered for. Again, online learning solution providers were making a field day, because they are taking advantage of the fact that institutions were not prepared. So these solution providers are now coming into our institutions to provide such solutions to them. Not only our institutions, even to our state governments. We have examples like Kaduna State Government that have engaged a firm to come with learning management systems suitable for their institutions. So these are the things that is happening. Now, the issues of quality in online learning. COVID-19 sent many institutions into panic mode. That is the fact. There was a haste to shift learning online without taking quality into account. The result is that poorly structured systems of coordinating learning activities because of these things that are being done in a haste. There were compromised quality of academic project of institutions. And this is open up to criticism from skeptics. Higher education institutions have relegated students to the vagaries of technology. There were some institutions that are even resisting at the beginning of going online. I know of a case of students in Kenya, the law student, they came on the street, they said that unless the policy of the institution or the country is changed, that they have to go online, there's no way they can go there. But now I think there is a change in the perspective of this online learning, because some universities I know, Kenyatta University, I know that they are now going online, and some other universities, UNISA already, they are doing that. NOUN is doing that. And some other institutions that they have now keyed into this issue of online learning because they know that that is the way forward. Now, the federal government of Nigeria had some initiatives during this period. So they provided some resources for especially those in the secondary schools and in the primary schools. So these are the sites that they have provided for students who are at home to hook onto, especially those who are providing for writing examinations like the WAEC. WAEC is a regional examination body that's meant for primary school leavers who are going to, secondary school leavers who are going to the university. The school gates e-learning services for primary school pupils. We have the mobile classroom application. And then the National Open University of Nigeria too, because we have some courses that we're running online. So the federal government said that we have to make it public so that institutions will make use of these resources that we have, especially the universities that are closed down because of the strike by the university lecturers. Then we have Khan Academy, we have CISO, UNESCO School Meet, the Learners Approach, and then teacher developments. These are some of the resources that the federal government has made public for students to make use of. Again, we have the one for the junior secondary school and the senior secondary school. These are some of the links that students are supposed to benefit from. We also have state governments that have embarked on e-learning during this period. We have about 5 of them. Ondo State governments, Ogun State, Edo State, Kaduna State, and Lagos State. These states have taken initiatives on running online programs, and they have provided resources for that. Now, the quality in assessments. I want to just give some of our contributions in the National Open University in terms of online assessments. The National Open University has come up with assessment of students online. For the first time, we have never done that. We have been doing for the continuous assessments, but for the summative assessments, we have not done any online assessments. And this time around, the assessment is on demand. Any students that want to write the online assessments, they should apply for that. They indicate it, and there are conditions given to them. If they meet up with such conditions, then they will now be allowed to write the test. So we had over 30,000 students participated in the on-demand online assessments. Now we have a combination of software used. The exam platform, revised engineered module, proctoring software approach, MPAS proctoring tool. Now, these are the features of the National Open University Exam on Demand platform. We have the examination application that we use to support essay, multiple choice, short answer, and many more question type. And then the proctoring software approach used is artificial intelligence based. Now, what this application does is to flag attempts on several looks away from exam window. It flag or block attempt to navigate away from exam window. It also flag and block any keyword or keyboard combination. Now, students' responses are saved immediately. Record exam session from start to finish. All record session can be reviewed and flagged. Students will be easily identified. Essay questions are easily marked virtually. Human proctoring also enabled. These applications allow human proctoring because you can monitor the student live, listen to all student background, and then see student live feed. Again, all transactions are secured in the back end. Live chats with students if there is any anomaly detected. There are times that students may encounter some problems, so they can chat and then tell us their problems so that we'll be able to know that they are having these challenges. And then there is immediate feedback for multiple choice and short answer questions. Multiple choice questions supported where students insert in their responses. We have secured browsing, secure submission, handle concurrent users, backup plan, audit trail. All essay exams are marked in secure environments. Marker have no access to student data to guarantee integrity, and then scripts are securely stored. Security features guaranteeing quality. The exam platform, firewalls installed to protect against cyber attacks, secure submission, browser lock, full screen invoked, all other computer applications locked, keyboard shortcut locked, no copy and paste, all other keyboard combination locked. And what are the proctoring activity tools there? Artificial intelligence enabled. We flagged attempts on several looks away from exam window. We flag or block attempts to navigate away from exam window. That's what the application does. It flags and blocks any keyboard combination. And then human proctoring also enabled, listen to all student background conversation. Protection against unauthorized access. Secured browsing guaranteed. These are the security features to guarantee the quality of the assessments. Types and nature of misconduct. Of course, with all these features that we put in place, there were attempts by students to cheat. And these were all detected. Several impersonation cases, over 200 candidates out of about 40,000 attempts. Wow. Those that were consulting external material via third party, we have about 93 candidates out of 40,000 attempts. Second party intrusion, over 180 candidates out of the total sittings. Blocking webcam after proctoring is successfully established to prevent human proctor monitoring student activities. We had such cases as about 250 candidates involved. Mobile phone detection. Some students walk into the exam hall with their mobile phones and they were using them. About 90 candidates were detected. Several looking away from the screen, about 400 of them with the candidates, because that was one of the conditions given to them, that they have to focus on the camera. Anyone that does that severally, the application will detect that and will record it against that student. What are the challenges of online learning assessments? Since this was the first time that we were doing this, there were challenges that students had poor internet connectivity, poor student awareness on virtual assessment ethics. Now, some of these students never knew that they will be caught cheating. They thought it would be difficult for us to police them, but we were able to do that. There's cross-device support. Not all students afford a PC or laptop. That's why not all of them demanded for this exam. Not all students have moderate computer skills. Data subscription became a problem for them. These are some of the issues that we shall be grappling with in terms of online learning assessment. Thank you. That's all I have for you.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Tang Lang. It's a fascinating insight into how you've been managing things in Nigeria at the Open University there. And thank you for your very candid and open sharing of your experience. The issue of examinations has been one that has certainly challenged universities here in the UK a great deal. And then going back to George's presentation, the pictures of unhappy students in Amsterdam and other places, it's very familiar to me here in the UK, where we have a lot of unhappy students locked down in campuses, paying for their accommodation and not able to take part in student life as they understand it. So a lot of very difficult things. And I must say for myself, while I think in the UK, universities responded as well as they could in emergency mode back in March and April, I am surprised, I think, I would go so far as to say that more effort hasn't been made on a national basis to reflect on how to move from that panic or emergency mode of online teaching to a more reflective and a more professional approach to blended provision, which is surely what is needed for the next 9 months. However, let's not take away from the great efforts that were made. Professor Tang Lang, can I pass on a question to you, which is around students outside Nigeria, but also in, say, West Africa. Does the National University of Nigeria, which is a big and influential institution, are you able to provide support to other universities in your region?
Yes, as our name typifies, we are open to support any institution that calls upon us to provide any solution to whatever they are looking for. Because at the moment, our students are not international. We don't have international students. They are localized. But I think in terms of support, providing support, we are ready to support any West African institution that wants to help. Because the training that we have provided to some universities, we don't charge that. It's free. We give the training free to them. So any institution that is willing to, they want to partner with us as an institution, we are ready to provide that support.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Paul Fleming for you, Professor Tang Lang. Are you aware of any novel solutions which have been adopted in African countries in addressing the needs of students who are remote and who don't have access to reliable internet connection? You mentioned this as a problem, and it's a problem I know in many African countries and wider around the world as well. Are you aware of any new solutions to the question of access to reliable internet connection from, say, remote locations, rural locations, and poor students?
As a matter of fact, we have been looking for such a solution. I'm not aware of any novel solutions for now, because that is what the problem we are facing, because majority of our students or the children live in the rural areas, and we are looking for a solution that will address issues where there is no internet, where there is no internet connectivity. I'm not aware of that. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. George, can I pass to you? I've got a very interesting question from Claudine Mulstein, who asks whether COVID is a unique challenge which will accelerate the social acceptance of distance education and assessment. And maybe I can just expand on that. Do you think it will accelerate its acceptance, or do you think the problems in the quality of provision of blended offers on campus will actually challenge the reputation of online and blended learning approaches rather than improve things? Do you want to comment on that, George?
Yeah, exactly, Alan. That is the issue here. That on the one hand, it's a momentum of really having the breakthrough, the big shift to adopt online education and accept it. As in the past, it was often considered as additional work, which was postponed or taken optionally to go to online education. The crisis could force now to really put effort in widely adopting online education, as long as it is not, like you say, is hampered by the negative publicity actually now, or the negative experiences that there are now. That when, let's say, we go back to the old days, back to normal, that people say, well, good riddance of online education now. That we have experienced that, and we go back to traditional education. Let's hope not, and that we take the opportunity, like organizations like ICDE and EDU, to promote the quality in online education and make best of this momentum to make a shift to enhancing education, because online education has never been developed as an alternative for traditional education when there is a pandemic. No, online education is there not only for specific target groups who have less access to campus education, but it has always been an enhancement for education as such. So there are a lot of elements and the online offerings that could well enhance education, and that is what we're also promoting, and there's a lot of research also there. So let's hope that we can take this momentum and promote the enhancement of education by online education, rather than replacing it and having a negative publicity by it, as is currently in the practice, the daily practice at this moment. So we hope not to see students again next year protesting against online education, but really movements within universities that change their internal strategies towards adopting quality online education.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question for both of you, but I'll pass it to you first, George, as you've got the floor. It's a difficult question, George, you won't be surprised to know. As we look at the next 12 months, we've got these new vaccines coming through. Let's hope that they're distributed equitably and that the whole world can get COVID under control. Do you think that the impact of the pandemic on campus-based teaching and their moving to blended and online modes will be permanent? Or do you think once COVID is under control, people will say, oh, let's go back to quotes, normal, close quotes?
I think in general, we have not only in relation to education, but everything that has changed over the past year. I think we need to evaluate very carefully before we go back to normal, between brackets, because a lot of things have changed over the past half year, but some also for the good, for the better. So I think we need to evaluate in general what we can learn from this time in the COVID crisis. Also our responsibilities, and some elements have to do also with sustainability issues and so on, and also globalization and pandemics. We all have to think about these ways of living and what that effect could be on the long term, of which COVID is one. Relating to education specifically, I think we have to promote that this stays on the agenda, to adopt elements of online education, having new modes of teaching, and learn from this time, but also improve. I think not only predicting that this could happen again in a year or 2 years with another situation. It is not only an alternative, but it's also about enhancing education, and therefore we need to use the time wisely and be prepared next year in providing quality education throughout the university that we represent.
Thank you. Let me put the question now to Professor Tanglang. Professor Tanglang, just to remind you, do you think this crisis is going to create permanent change in the way that universities deliver education in the future? Or do you think once COVID is under control, people will go back with relief to what they regard as normal, to last year's practices on campus?
No, I don't think they'll be going back in anymore because of the enthusiasm of how the new normal has been accepted. The only handicap that we are having is just that this universities are closed down. Otherwise, at the background, the management of institutions are now working towards having infrastructures for online learning. So I don't see anything going back again. The only problem we have is we are yet to have a policy, a national policy on online learning. And I'm sure with what has happened now, our regulators are working hard now to make sure that institutions key into online learning, blended, actually, a blended online learning. So I don't see any going back again to the normal way of doing things because of the way we have embraced online learning moment.
And if I may add, Alan, I think it cannot be the case that universities representing quality education, that in 2 years they have to go back to an emergency remote education again. So that they have to learn from the situation and be prepared and innovate their education from now on.
Yeah, I think as Claudine Mulstein said, I think for myself, I think this crisis will accelerate the adoption of digital support to learning and teaching on all campuses. And myself, I believe there will be a permanent impact of this crisis. And I think while the present students may not feel it yet, it will be an improvement. Let me go back to Professor Tanglang. I've got a question from John Erskine, Professor Tanglang, about how decisions are made within a module about changing the examination format, whether, for example, moving from an online timed exam to one not involving a timed element. Is that decision made at the module element or at the program element or at the dean's level or at senior management's level? How are those decisions made?
Thank you. There are two ways here. The learning management system itself has a model, a system that assessments, the decision for the assessment is determined by the teacher himself, the lecturer, because there are areas where students will submit assignments and it is this teacher that will provide that assignment. There are areas that students will have to sit for quiz within a module that have been taught. The teacher is the one that decides on that and the time that we ask them to do. But there is also the one that the institution itself takes the decision. These decisions come from the department, the faculty, and then to Senate. So Senate takes the decision that within this period, students are supposed to submit assignments. And then within this period, they will sit for exams. So it's two ways, the lecturer and the institution itself through its Senate.
Yes. Yeah, it's there are major institutional challenges to this assessment issue, and I must say I don't see the issues being resolved at module or course level only, although of course issues may start there. Professor Tanglang, let me continue as you've got the floor, and then I'll come back to George Eubanks. Do you? One participant asks whether discussions could lead to perfecting the blend between face-to-face traditional and online education into a new synthesis when we have corona crisis under control. Could this be the future, a new sort of blended synthesis between the two modes? What do you think about that?
Yes, human beings as we are, there may be some people that will want to stick to the old way of doing things. And there are people who are also interested in continuing with the new normal. So I can see that our discussion is coming towards that we will continue with the face-to-face as well as the online learning put together, blended together. That's what I see that's going to happen. Because there are those students that may want to opt for the online learning in some of their subjects. And there are those that they want to continue the way it is. But then I can see that there's going to be a blend in the future.
Thank you. George, can I come back to you and put that question for your comments?
Yeah, I think so for continuing education, the group of 25 years and older, the flexibility and scalability of online education is the best model. But when you look at the campus-based students like now, they would very much benefit from the blend, taking best of both worlds. And I'm quite sure that many of the educators at this moment have experienced the opportunities that are given by new modes of teaching, by online teaching, and they are also by being challenged to do so in this time. They are also getting creative and curious about the opportunities there are by adding online modes of teaching in combination with face-to-face. So I think it's not only the best way to organize campus education and by blend, because you have enhanced education that way. It's also, I think, the educators are, by the current situation, triggered and becoming more creative in that sense. So I think it's the basis for a future of blended education.
George, we've got time for one more question, and I'll take advantage of the chair and ask it myself, if I may, and then I'll come back to Professor Tanglang. Moving away from students, what do you think about people who work in universities, academics and professionals? They, after all, have also worked from home for 9 months, principally. Do you think there's going to be permanent changes to ways in which people work in universities?
First of all, I think they appreciate much more the connection with their colleagues, because that is really missing, I guess, in first instance. Working from home is you're missing the interaction with your colleagues. On the other hand, they will also experience that it is often much more efficient, in a sense that I think there will be a new balance in development and provision. So I think that you have to reconsider that what you make online or offer online costs in first instance more time, but in the end you can reuse it again, giving you more time for maybe having individual contact with students or smaller groups. In that sense, I guess there will be a new balance in development and provision that is an opportunity that they will have experienced and will change.
Professor Tanglang, what about people who work in universities? Do you think their patterns of working will be changed permanently also?
Well, you know, the working at home, it has to be something that will be regulated, because at the moment, those of us that have come back, we still come to our offices and do our work. But you know, if you remain at home, and then you cannot remain at home throughout the day, at least because you have to come and then interact with your students, or even from other things that you have to do in the office. But I can see that it's going to be a combination of staying at home and then coming to the office, but not permanently staying at home.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk in newspapers in the UK, and I think more widely, about this question of working patterns, not just in education, but much more broadly. I mean, outside the hospitality and the arts sectors, most organizations have kept going without using offices. And, you know, some senior managers are saying, well, I wonder if we need offices in the way that we have done in the past. Maybe we can save money. And there's questions about what's going to happen to city centers with all these great office blocks. Maybe they won't be occupied in the same way that they have been. However, I've also got, just in concluding, a very helpful comment from Dr. Suma Al-Haj Ali, who suggests that, of course, there won't be a one-size-fits-all way forward, and that the distribution of what sort of blended solutions we arrive at are going to depend on the characteristics and the nature of programs, and on the different learners and the different contexts. And I'm sure that is true. So I think we've reached the end of our hour together. And I would like to thank our two participants very much for their insights and for their time. Professor Nabeth Tanglang from Nigerian Open University, and from George Eubanks of the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities. I think we'll conclude there. I'll just check whether Tarun Yelsvika, Secretary General, wants to make a final word.
Sorry. Thank you, Alan. Yes, well, I would just like to thank you, all the great presenters. Thank you for the questions, for all the participants, and thank you, Alan, for sharing this session for us. And I hope to see you in the next webinar in December.
Yes, we shouldn't forget the next webinar, December the 9th, where the focus will be on Asia, and lots of very, very interesting experiences to catch up with in Asia in all its variety, for those of you who look at what's happening around the world. But do look out on the ICDE website for details of that, and I'm sure you'll get a communication as a participant here. So thanks again to our two contributors and to ICDE for organizing this, and see you on December the 9th. Bye all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.